Hey everyone, welcome to Handing the Shame Back, a show dedicated to the adult women and men survivors of child sexual abuse. We know the numbers are huge and growing, and this is one small attempt to try and provide resource and support for you beautiful survivors watching. You're not alone. As with all shows, there is a trigger warning, and our wonderful guest today will be sharing her story with us. A few things she may say may resonate with you and help you. But if you feel triggered at all, please do stop watching, go to the show notes below, and you'll be guided to some help and resource. So my wonderful guest today is called Katy Sudano. She's all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. She is a mother of 5 children. She is an author, and clearly she's a survivor. So welcome to you, Katy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, just wonderful that you're here. So as with all of my fabulous guests, for the sake of our survivor community watching, can we perhaps go back to the beginning and look at whatever details you're prepared to share about your early life, the abuse that you suffered? Why? Because someone watching may be able to resonate quite quickly with that.
Okay, yeah, for sure. So I was born actually in Switzerland, Lausanne, Switzerland, to obviously my mother and my father. They married very young, and they waited to have me because my father was in college. And shortly after I was born, my mother decided to divorce my father because he was, I guess, having affairs on the side. And it just, I guess, wasn't a fit for my mom. So when she left him, she had to fend for herself and find a job. And she dropped me off with my grandparents, her parents, in Panama City, Panama. My grandfather, who I call Huito, it's just an endearing term in Spanish. He and his wife, Huita, which I call my grandmother, took care of me. But it's very strange I don't know if this is a survivor thing, but I remember the apartment where we were in detail. I was only barely 2 years old. And I remember my mom leaving and feeling very scared and abandoned, even though they were loving grandparents. But fast forward, she went to Atlanta, Georgia, where I am now, and got a job for a company, and she was a secretary, and ended up dating one of her bosses, I think, or maybe they weren't directly working together. I should have brought tissues, sorry. But they started a relationship. And when she felt comfortable enough for me to join her, she sent for me, and my grandparents brought me to her. I was at that time probably around 3, and I met this man, and I've said his real name in my book, so I'm feel free to say his name. His real name is Peter Tappan Fairchild. That name is the only name in my book that's real, by the way. He started grooming me the minute he met me. I don't remember a lot about how he groomed me. I just remember everybody loved him. He was a really nice guy, a bit of a con artist, I think. Very charming, very smart, and knew how to make money and use money for the things that he wanted to control. That one of it was my mom, of course. He promised her a good life and a big house in a nice neighborhood, and So she got married and we moved in with him. And then fast forward to when I was 6 years old, we had moved to Florida. Boca Raton, Florida, actually was a very, very nice place in Florida, kind of fancy. And, now everybody knows Boca Raton. Back then it was growing. And we were building a home. He had been previously married and had two biological boys and one adoptive girl. Now as an adult, it's kind of strange because it's like, why did you adopt a child if you had your own biological children, and why a girl? But hindsight, you understand why he wanted a girl around. So it was around 6 years old in this house we had moved into, that they constructed and built. And he used to tuck me in every night and stay with me in bed for some time. And I think one night my mom said to me that it was taking a little bit longer than usual. And she went up to check on me and found him sexually abusing me. And she lost it. She was like freaking out and pulled my panties on and grabbed me and said, we have to get out of here. And I'll never forget it. It was like the same thing when she left me. I remember every detail of that night. And she put me in her car. I remember she was smoking and shifting the gears. And I remember being confused and scared, thinking I had done something wrong. And then she started telling me, what he did was wrong. Don't let him do it again. You have to protect yourself. Like it's not your fault. She did tell me that, I remember, but she also kind of put it on me as a 6-year-old to kind of feel like I needed to protect myself, like it was up to me. So in the back of my head, I was a little confused because I'm like, okay, it's not my fault. What he did was wrong. It felt good, but I kind of knew it was wrong. So I had all these weird, confusing thoughts, I remember. And then I think the thing as an adult, as a mother of 5, that hurts me or pains me the most is that she drove right back to the house and put me in bed and slept right next to the guy after seeing what he had done to me. And then he promised he would never do it again and that he would be good. And of course, that was a lie. And he got sneakier, more threatening, more abusive, more very weird. He did weird, weird things with me. And fast forward, when I was a teenager, we had moved to Colorado. And his son, who was 4 years older than me, so in Colorado I was about 11, so he was about, I guess, 14, 15 years old. He and his friends would do things, as well. So it's almost like I had a neon sign on my forehead. I'm vulnerable. Come and get me, like I'm available. And I wanted the attention, I wanted to feel loved and liked, and he was older, so he was cool. And he actually lives right down the road from me, which is really weird. I haven't seen him in years, but I did see him in 1998. He drove by because my mom told him where I lived, which I don't understand that either, but we have talked about it and we're moved past it now, thank goodness. But I'll never forget, he came and he's like, hey, I'm moving back to Georgia and this is so great to see you. And I was like, don't you remember anything? And he doesn't remember anything of his past. He doesn't remember the good stuff or the bad stuff. He doesn't remember vacations we went on. He's completely blocked out the past. And I believe him. I think he really did.
What do you, why would, what do you think? Why do you think he's blocked out the past?
Because I feel he was abused as well. He had to have been. I mean, he'll look at a picture and he's like, there's no possible way I was there. That can't be me in the picture. And it's like, you're clearly in the picture. So he has to have some sort of trauma. But that's his journey, you know, it's not up to me. And thankfully, he honored my wishes, and I made it very clear I didn't want anything to do with him, because he was the son of the guy that abused me for over 10 years. So fast forward, Peter got transferred to Europe, and we went back to live in Germany. And we were in a small apartment. It was a 3-bedroom apartment. Germany, I was 12 years old, and it was very difficult for me. I was completely Americanized at that point, wearing American clothes. And the southern part of Germany was called the Hessen region. There was still a lot of American bases, military bases. And the Americans really didn't have a great reputation back in the 80s, because I guess, a lot of times didn't really respect the customs and traditions of the Germans. And so I kind of was clumped into that, even though I wasn't military. And I was European. I was born in Switzerland, and I was raised to respect culture. But my mom and Peter decided to put me in a German school, all German speaking. There was no one that spoke English. So it was quite difficult for me, because I didn't speak the language. I'm very American. So I was very much bullied, punched by teachers, and just crazy stuff. I was hung over a balcony 5 stories high just to make fun of me, and they spat on me. And so I was very vulnerable, and yet I still had to show up and be the good girl and stay out of trouble, because I had to deal with Peter at home. So when I turned 14, Peter was very smart with how he would abuse me. He would do enough to get pleasure for himself, but not enough to make it an evidence on my body, if that makes sense. So I never had any physical evidence of anything that he would do.
So he didn't rape you. He didn't rape you.
I don't think so. There's a lot I don't remember as well.
Yeah.
I think he was smarter than that. It was more of a touching, having me do stuff to him. It was very weird. Like, I remember he would watch me take a bath and watch me wash myself while he was performing on himself. And then he would give me magazines in the bath of naked men, and want me to describe how it made me feel. And that would make him, you know, that would please him. So it was more like a weird psychological sexual thing, and touching and all that other stuff. But I don't think there was any rape, because I was raped when I was 14, and I remember hurting and bleeding. So I feel like he never actually penetrated.
So can I ask, when your mother, just because there's so much, and by the way, you're doing amazing, Katy.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're doing great. Going back to when you were 6 and your mum walked in, she saw you, she saw what he was doing, she immediately removed you, and she took you back that night. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
she basically drove around the block and came back and took you back and told you you need to protect yourself. From that point on, did she ever approach and ask you, are you okay? Is there anything going on?
Oh yeah. Yeah, she did. She to this day, she says, I watched you like a hawk. It's hard for her to believe that anything continued because she was very well aware that he could have been continuing. But and as most survivors know, when you're threatened in the psychological manner that I was, he didn't threaten to like kill me or kill anybody, but he said, the lifestyle that you know will be gone if you say anything. Your mom will end up with nothing
Yeah.
if you speak. And I knew it was very important for my mom to live this lifestyle and to have, everything she had with Peter. And that was my perception anyways. I obviously was young. I don't know for sure, but it just seemed that way to me. So him telling me I'm going to take everything away from you, you're going to live on the streets, was the most scariest thing in my mind at that time,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I mean, as a child, really, you bless you just you don't have the cognition to be able to formulate or process what
Yeah.
any of that really means. And for our beautiful survivors watching, those who were also threatened or manipulated, actually, to never speak. It's very clever how these abusers do it, because what can tend to happen is we just believe 100% because they are the ones in charge. And
Mhm.
although your mum didn't want to think anything was happening, the reality was that she was complicit in that. She thought for one moment, or believed for one moment, that of course he wouldn't continue.
Mhm.
And I'm not judging that, I'm just saying, I bet if she could have a do-over, you would not have been driven back into that driveway.
Oh, yeah. No, look, my mom and I have had multiple conversations. She was very hurt when I wrote the book. Um, I was brutally honest, and she doesn't remember things the way I remember it, of course. And I know I hurt her, and that hurt me to know that I hurt her. But I told her, I said, but mom, look at the beauty of where we are now. The fact that we can have a relationship and talk about these things now, clearly I had to write the book as if I was how I felt then. And that's how I felt. It's just I sometimes do feel I have to justify my truth to her.
To her, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
But I
she's a mum. So
Yeah.
what do we as mums want? We want to always protect and look after our beautiful children. Well, that's most normal mums. I'm not talking about mentally unhinged mothers, like the one that I had. I guess, Katie, the thing is, standing in your truth or standing in the truth means that you you will be, some people will embrace that and want that to be the case for you. Others that, like your mum, who maybe had a part in it, may feel a little maligned, even though that is not your intent.
Yeah, she feels hurt for sure, but because I know in her heart of hearts, she feels she did everything she could. She feels that she did protect me and she was there for me. And in many cases, she was. It was just with Peter, he was such a good manipulator. He manipulated her as well. He used her.
Yep.
Mhm.
And that's how they carry on, because it's actually, believe it or not, it's not really, the child is not the focus. When it comes to grooming, yes, you've been groomed, and for survivors watching this, it's the adults around you that were groomed. And look at your mum. She was groomed to the
Yeah.
point of absolute 100% belief in everything
Well, this
that
is
spoke.
This is going to blow some people's mind. A lot of times when they hear this part of the story, they don't understand how I'm even having a relationship with my mom. But, I truly have a huge belief in faith and communication. And you can't move forward in your healing if you don't talk about these things, for sure. So when I was in Germany, I was 14 years old. He did hurt me. I don't know how. I don't remember. I just remember in that moment, it's almost like when you know that you could die from something, you want to do everything you can to protect yourself. I didn't feel like I was going to die in the physical sense. I felt like this was going to break me and that I would never be able to come back from. Maybe he was going to try to rape me. I don't know what it was. I just knew I had to get out of that situation. And when I say situation, again, we were in a small apartment. It was a 3-bedroom flat in Germany. And I was at the room down the hall, and my mom was in her room just 2 doors down. I remember yelling and getting out of there. I ran to my mom and I told her, I said, Mom, Peter's still doing it. He's never stopped. He was hurting me. You need to help me. And I don't remember everything with pure clarity like I do the other things, but I do remember the gist was, really? Are you sure? And I'm like, ask him, ask him. And he came into the room, and there might have been some discussions, but then she looked at him and said, have you been abusing and molesting Katy? And he said, yes. He did not waver. Yeah. And I think she was stunned, because I really do think that she did not know. I mean, I don't know as a mom how you wouldn't know, but I do believe she didn't know. And instead of leaving him, she put me on a plane and sent me to my grandparents, and basically told me not to say anything, that this is shameful and keep it quiet. So she stayed in Germany with him, and I'm at my grandparents' house, whom I love dearly. They're my rock for sure. But I lost it. I couldn't hold the secret. And I had a nervous breakdown, and the whole family found out. And then we had a family vacation. And my grandmother said, oh, you're going to be happy. We'll go to Costa Rica with my family. She's Costa Rican. She has this cute little Spanish accent. She's like, you're going to forget about all of this. Let's go to the beach and have fun. And then I go, but Peter's there. And now, mind you, the whole family knows what he's done to me for the past 10 years. Nobody shunned him. Everybody was happy, drinking, eating, having vacation, going on the boat, like as if nothing ever happened. And my little 14-year-old self was like, how can these people love me and support me knowing what he's done, and yet pretending like nothing ever happened? That just blew my mind. It was that vacation where I felt like the dirty girl. I felt like nobody really cared about me. On the outside, they showed me that they loved me, and they said all these wonderful things about me and how beautiful I am and talented and athletic and smart. But then they're accepting this man who they know has been hurting me and conning us and manipulating us and doing all these psychological mind, I call it a mind F in the book, but I won't say that here. But it was like everything was perfect. And it was at that moment that I realized, who does love me? What's real? And what's fake? And then that's when my mind started really down spiraling, because everything that I thought was real wasn't. And then it was downhill from there.
So
and that's when I raped and all the other stuff.
And look, I think you're describing classic gatekeepers and enablers, Katy. So that is a classic definition, what you have just described with your entire extended family. They knew it. They couldn't have known it more clearly. It had been
He
discussed.
admitted it. Mhm.
And yet there was full permission for it to continue if that is what he wished, because nobody was going to stand up to him or stand beside you to support you in this. So this is how these pedophiles and abusers get away with it, because good people do nothing.
Mhm. Yeah, I
And
don't know if I know that it wasn't a time like we are now where we're much more open and talking about these things, but I'm sorry. I cannot excuse this behavior.
no,
I look at them now and my mom wants me to have a chat with them and get to be around them. I'm like, what am I going to talk about? Like I tried to be, a lot of people call themselves chameleons, when they're survivors. Um, I prefer the words colors. I changed my colors depending on who I was with so that I could get along and so that I could feel accepted. I did that for years. And for years, I didn't know who I was. I couldn't really accept the compliments people gave me because I'm the dirty girl, and what are you telling me this because you want something from me? Are you telling me this because you're being fake like my family? Like I went on life never trusting anybody and anything that they told me. I questioned and I figured it was a lie and that they just wanted something from me. Complacency, sex, a bad relate, whatever it was. Um, so that was very difficult. And then I went to live with my father as a teenager. That was rough. My father's um very strict, very perfectionism. Everything had to be perfect. I had to be perfect. What we dressed, what we wore, how we spoke. He was very high in um, financially in the world and economically and politically. People knew who he was. So it was a lot of pressure for me to again be the color of perfectionism and to be maintain my composure. I was very dramatic growing up. I used drama and tears and emotions to try to get attention. And people would roll their eyes and, oh, Katie's being dramatic again. Just let her do her thing. And so I really never got much attention. So with my father, I decided, well, maybe if I'm perfect in sports and I'm perfect in school and I'm the popular girl and I'm this and that, I'll gain his approval. And I wasn't getting it. And my half sisters were getting it. And I started spiraling again. And I told him that Peter had abused me. And he said, yeah, your mom told me. She said something about that and that you needed therapy. She asked me for money. And I'm like, well, did you give it to her? And he's like, no, because I don't believe it. And he sat me down, I remember. And I'm like, you don't believe that he
wow,
admitted?
wow.
Yeah. And he's like, no, no, couldn't have happened. You're drama, you're dramatic, you're a victim. Go to your room and do your homework. Then that was it. Never spoken about it again.
Katy, every adult in your life that could have supported you and stood by you in this chose not to. And I'm not surprised. And for survivors, beautiful survivors watching, we then have to become what is acceptable so that we can continue. Yeah. So I'm not surprised you had to, as you call, change your colors to fit, because otherwise it would have been an incredibly lonely and painful experience and a road to insanity, frankly. So Katy, how did you find your way back to yourself? Tell us a bit about that.
Well, to be quite honest, it wasn't until maybe 5 years ago.
It usually takes a while.
I mean, truly, I feel like an onion, or let's call ourselves a flower.
That's
There's
nice.
just a rose. It's layers, of course. Um, my book, when I talk about my story, my intention of writing the book was not to talk about the abuse, which was very kind of, it wasn't my intention. My intention was to talk about what happened to me when I got married to my first husband. But as I started writing the book, and as the layers of the rose petals started opening, I realized people are going to think I am absolutely insane for marrying this man. So I have to describe and talk about what had happened to me as a young girl and a young teenager, so that they would understand my mindset going into a marriage that was completely wrong. I was 19 years old. I was somewhat manipulated into marrying him. I didn't even know him. It was in Costa Rica. Anyways, fast forward, I did get married 3 months after I had seen him. And I had known him years prior, but he was 8 years older than me too. So he was much older. He was the youngest of three in a very powerful family again. So I'm like kind of like my father. My father did not approve. I was 19. And my mom, she was all for it. And then, but she did support me the night before. I said, I don't want to get married. This is crazy. What am I doing? And she's like, well, if you don't want to get married, don't get married. So I felt like I had her support. And I'm like, well, the president of the country's going to be there. The archbishop is marrying us. Like, I don't know how many people are going to be there. I don't know anybody, but I felt like I was stuck. Like I can't back out now. So I got married. I got pregnant on the honeymoon. Um, I went back and I told him I was pregnant. He got very upset because people are going to think that you got married because you were pregnant. What is my family going to think? He was very upset. And he decided to basically bolt. So he had multiple houses in the country. And I was basically by myself at that point, going through the pregnancy and alone, scared, 20 at this time. And God does some interesting things. Of course, like you have your angels, so I'll say God. God decided that he would put another man in my mother's life who was Costa Rican, who worked here in Atlanta, who was transferred to Costa Rica right when I was about due to have my firstborn. So that was a blessing. My mom was there. And she was very supportive and she helped me and she knew what was going on with the family that I had married. And very quickly, things turned very bad. The minute that they found out I was having a boy, it's like all of a sudden that meant the world to them. They wanted him for the namesake.
Oh,
fast forward, they kidnapped him.
This was your husband? Wanted
my husband and his family
decided. Oh, okay, so they wanted back in your life now.
Well, they didn't want back in my life. They wanted the kid. Well, when he was 11 months old, they decided that was enough. They didn't want anything to do with me. They took Andre, my son, and called me after trying to figure out where the heck they were, and told me basically, we'll tell him you died, go away, live your life, leave him here. You're an American girl in Costa Rica. You have no power here. Just leave and forget about him. And I think, I don't know about other moms, but that was not who I am. They didn't know who they were dealing with. Fortunately for me, I did have some
very good connections, and my mother's husband, the Costa Rican, had good connections. And we started the process of getting him back. It took a month, but I got him back, and they were furious. It was all over the news. It was in the newspapers. Then they decided that they would play dirty, and they deposed a psychiatrist in front of the judge and told them that I was mentally incapable of not only taking care of a child, but to take care of myself. And he recommended that the judge institutionalize me in a mental place for life. I remember getting that piece of paper, running to the lawyer. How am I going to fight this? And he was like, this is the most prominent psychiatrist. He's got documentation of all your visits. I'm like, I've never been to a psychiatrist in my life. I've been to a therapist, but never here. And I was like shocked. I'm like, how are we going to fight this? And basically said, you can't. You have to flee the country. You have to figure this out. And we did. We hired a coyote. They're people who bring smuggle people. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
And that's what we did.
You got him out, thank God.
I got him out. I can never go back to Costa Rica. I came to the United States and landed with my mother's brother and his wife. And they basically said, we can't keep you here because we will be it would be dangerous for us legally. He's a prominent doctor and surgeon. So I had to fend for myself. And I don't want to give the book away, but obviously I'm here. So everything worked out in our favor. Again, I think that was all a God thing. And I'm very grateful for the coincidences that happened for me to be safe.
Okay, so my goodness me, Katy, the abuse just kept coming, and what we know, I mean, what an amazing woman you are, and I'm so pleased you got your beautiful son back and then out. Don't we love coyotes? Oh, but I need to just take you back to a couple of things as we head towards close. Just a couple of quick questions before I want to ask you some things about your book and then advice for survivors that you may have. Did Peter and your mother split up at some point? And if so,
when I was 16.
Yeah.
Oh, why or how?
Yeah. Yes, at 16, why did they split? Just quickly, if you know.
Well, I mean, it was bound to happen, but actually, when I felt like the dirty girl at that family reunion vacation,
Yeah.
I had decided that he would no longer have me. He would no longer hurt me. He would no longer touch me. I felt like I had power at that point. And so when I was 16, I went back to live with my mom in Switzerland, in the town that I was born in, with Peter, but Peter never touched me again. But what he did do is he got mad over the fact that I had the last bit of orange juice and he lost it. I think he lost it because he did not have control over me.
Over you,
It was
yeah.
building up. And obviously the orange juice was just the last straw. He grabbed a knife and he went to go stab my mother in front of me. I remember screaming and yelling and running to my room. And I told my mom, I said, you have to leave him. This is crazy. On his next business trip, we pack up our things or leave him. Who cares? We got to get out.
And she did. Thank you.
She did.
That's great. Okay, next question. Did your mother ever apologize to you for sending you away instead of him when you were sent away?
She has apologized. Yeah, she's apologized. I feel like for me, a true apology is, I'm truly sorry. I wish things were done, or, something along those lines.
Yeah.
But when she apologizes, and I know she's probably going to see this, which might be good, it's like I wish it would be without the ending. I'm sorry, but I did everything I could. I'm sorry, but I had issues. I'm sorry, but I was suicidal. Like, I wasn't happy when you were away. Like, I don't want to hear that. I'm sorry you were going through that, but we're talking about the abandonment and the fact that I needed support. So yes, she's apologized.
With the but. So I just want to point something out, because you're going to love this, Katy, and for our beautiful survivors watching as well. Anything preceding the word but is erased.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ever receive apologies and then have a but, that's not an apology. And equally, survivors, and Katy and me included, never do it ourselves. Never do it. If you genuinely want to apologize and leave it there. Don't start justifying.
I mean,
But
with her,
Katy,
I feel she is sorry. I
yes,
feel she is.
but she's unable to put herself to that next level. For her, she's possibly doing the best she can with what she knows.
Yeah.
So, Katy, as we're moving to a closeout, can you, if you have your wonderful book, could you hold it up for us, please?
This is my book right here. I don't know if it's kind of.
Yes, no, we can see it. Truth gives strength to wings. Fantastic.
Is it
And so
backwards?
where can people purchase your book?
Oh, any online store. Barnes and Nobles, Target, Sears, Kmart, Amazon is the most
Okay.
popular site. Yeah.
All right. And is it in all versions, or?
It's not an Audible. I've been trying, but my voice just is like, I don't know. It might not be the right time for me to record the Audible.
Okay.
It might be a mental thing where I'm just not ready to speak it. And I'll tell you one thing that's strange about my memoir, just so that you have context. My real name is on the book as the author, but my name in the book is a different name, and it's Sydney DeVold. I could not reread my book or edit my book with my name in it. I just couldn't do it. So I changed it. It's actually my grandfather's father's real name. And it was also the name I was going to use if I needed to live in hiding when I left Costa Rica. So it has.
Yeah. And Katy, as a survivor, you do what you need to protect your beautiful self, and full credit to you. And this is safe space for you. You've been through an enormous amount, and I can see you've had to grow through an enormous amount. So just in our last couple of minutes, what has helped you? What has helped you survive your child sexual abuse?
Well, for sure, my husband. I met him in 1996 when I fled the country.
Yep.
And he is the most strongest man.
Yep.
Faithful, loyal, and I have never met anyone who walks the walk and talks the talk. If he says something, he does it, or he follows through. He's never made a promise that he's broken. And I needed someone like that in my life because I'd never had that. And I needed someone who knew exactly every time I was triggered or every time I would lose it. He knew better. He knew that whatever I was lashing out at, I didn't mean, and he knew where it was coming from.
Well, we're going to call him Saint. No, look, but you deserve to have someone like that in your life. And I think for our wonderful survivors watching, some of whom can't have relationships because the trust is just not there,
Mm.
wonderful ones, anything is available to you. You just have to believe you deserve this, because you do. And Katy, final question from me. What advice would you give our beautiful survivors watching?
Well, there's so much to say on that, but what helped me survive was really just finding purpose, grounding myself in something that I knew that I could get out of my own thoughts, out of my own way, and be of service to others. Sometimes you start off a little selfish, like you want to give to others so that you feel better, but then it turns into real selfless help. And you do feel good. I spend a lot of time meditating. I spend a lot of time by myself and just reflecting on well, I'm very spiritual, so God and Jesus for me is everything. I don't know that I would be here or have a successful family, the 5 kids. I probably would not have been a good mom had I not been grounded in my own faith. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. So, Katy, wow, please stay right there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And blessings to everyone. My heart goes out to everyone who's been through something like this.
Thanks, Katy. Hey, audience, some real beautiful nuggets, and what an inspiring guest we've had today. So she said many things of interest, and I wish we had longer. But the ones that stuck out for me were that at the age of 6, she was told to protect herself. No, that's 6-year-olds are unable to do that. Just look at any photo of a 6-year-old and you'll see what I mean. Usually there's a few teeth missing. Secondly, when her mother realised that the abuse had been continuing and Peter confirmed it, he was not sent away. Beautiful little Katy was sent away. And as survivors, we know that that's often the story for us. We are the ones that are rejected. But what this woman's been able to do is turn things around. She's grounded herself by finding purpose. She has an unwavering faith. And for you guys, whatever it is you choose, I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you. Thank you.